Welcome back to Mythic Sky Storytime. I'm Dr. Laura Tad, spiritually oriented psychological astrologer and wellness consultant. This is the 12th and last show of my series Cosmic Costumes. It's been rather protracted to get this last episode out, but that's what happens sometimes with life. And it's in keeping with the dreamy, not very time-oriented sign of Pisces that is the focus of this episode. So Pisces is the 12th sign of the zodiac, and it is often depicted as two fishes swimming in opposite directions. And depending on the imagery that you see, the quality of the artwork, those fishes may or may not have a reed between them, but that is how they are represented historically. And as you'll see throughout this episode, that the reed connecting those two fish is a significant part of understanding this sign. The glyph that we use with Pisces is understood to be essentially sort of a crescent moon in both directions. So both a waxing and a waning crescent moon with a line through the middle of them, connecting those two parts of the lunar cycle. The very beginning of the light appearing and the very end of the light as it's disappearing. The planet that we associate with Pisces is Neptune, and then historically it's been Jupiter before we had discovered Neptune, and you'll learn more about that throughout the episode. The polarity of Pisces is the sign of Virgo, and so understanding Virgo also helps us to understand Pisces, for they are mirrors of each other. And Pisces as a sign is mutable water. Every sign in the zodiac, as I've spoken about in previous episodes, is associated with an element and a mode. And in Pisces, we find ourselves returning to water. Water signs are feeling driven. They're emotional, they're emotive. They are receptive and sensitive, they're resourceful, they're intuitive, they're moody, right, in that emotional way. And in that emotional, moody way, particularly with Pisces, Pisces is emotionally impacted by the people around them. Their emotional equilibrium or lack thereof is often very much interwoven with how the people around them are managing their emotions or navigating their emotional ups and downs. Now, from a mode perspective, so there's cardinal, fixed, and mutable signs, and Pisces is mutable. The last of the mutable signs, last of the water signs, it's the very end of the zodiac. Mutable signs occur the end of seasons. It's that transitional energy. So there is a malleability to mutable signs. There's an adaptability that Pisces has and a flexibility because it's in this transitional period moving from airy, intellectual Aquarius into following Pisces into fiery Aries. And so there's this flexibility and movability, changeability that we see in the mutable signs that we see with Pisces. There's a lack of focus that can come with that because there's no real direct direction that mutable signs have. That can sort of merge, particularly in that watery way. It can go in all directions simultaneously. As a result, Pisces can be somewhat ambivalent. It can be hard to focus because it can see or respond in a multiplicity, in a multiple of ways and directions, and lack a direct response to the world. Pisces also can be unrealistic in how it walks through the world, in that mutability of convinced that everything's going to be fine if you just pause and wait, is particularly letting things settle, letting the water calm. Pisces can then, more than other signs, as we'll see, more vulnerable to spiritual bypassing or feeling like everything will be fine and not necessarily being proactive about it. There is a restlessness to the mutable energy of Pisces, though, of wanting to both move and sit still. It's that mutability. It's trying to navigate. It's not really directive, but it is also not very comfortable standing still or staying in one place. Water, even stagnant water, moves with the wind. So there's a restlessness of wanting to maybe stay still, maybe move, an uncomfortableness of how to stay present and in the present moment that can be part of that mutability energy of Pisces. Now, looking to Neptune to help us understand Pisces, let's just unpack a little bit about what Neptune is and how that might relate archetypally to this watery, mutable last sign of the zodiac. We did not discover Neptune until September 1846, and there's a little debate about exactly which day it was because it was early morning, so it may have been the 23rd, may have been the 24th. It was sort of around midnight in September of 1846. And so for a long time, given that Western astrology is 3,000 years old and Neptune was only discovered in the mid-1800s, there was a long period of time where Jupiter was the planet associated with Pisces. But how I understand the discovery of the outer planets in relation to astrology is that that's helped to broaden our understanding, deepen our understanding of the sign with the discovery of the outer planets, with assigning a planet to a sign that used to be governed or related to a social or a personal planet, that the discovery of the other planets has flushed out some details for us that perhaps we didn't understand prior to the mid-1800s. So given that Neptune is so far out in the solar system, it's about a 165-year cycle around the zodiac. So it's a very slow-moving planet comparatively to Mercury or even Jupiter, that's a 12-year cycle. So because it's a 165-year cycle, that means, and of course, like all the planets, it has an elliptical orbit, but it is roughly in the same sign for 14 years. And so we call it a generational planet because of that, because there's over a decade that it's in the same sign. So whole swaths of individuals, whole generations of individuals will be born with Neptune in the same sign. Now, Neptune in mythology, right, he is Poseidon in the Greek myth. He is the god of the sea. And so part of that Piscean, watery, archetypal imagery of the two fishes very much interweaves beautifully with the god of the sea archetype. Now, some of the key words that we associate with Neptune that then parallel to Pisces as well: illusion, being psychic, being intuitive, being clairvoyant, all of that falls into the Neptune world. That's part of the just unconscious more broadly, or other ways, other planes of reality. Neptune also governs drugs and alcohol. So there's that, again, that other planes of reality, other states of consciousness. We either get there through prayer, ritual, ceremony, or substances, right? So Neptune governs both of those. Within that, then Neptune can govern confusion because there's a lack of clarity, confusion and delusion that shows up as Neptune as an archetype. But it's also about transcendence and God, goddess, poetry, the sage, the mystic, dreams, spirituality more broadly, as well as religion. Faith in terms of organized religion, but faith in a more broad sense of having faith, trust in the bigger picture, in the bigger plan of life. So to look briefly at Jupiter, as he was the prior governor, prior ruler of Pisces, we see, as I said, a 12-year cycle. So it takes Jupiter about 12 years to go all the way through the zodiac, which means that he resides in a sign for about a year, give or take. Not a calendar year, but roughly 12 months. And Jupiter, as one of the original planets identified, then is associated with Thursday. So it's where we get the word Thursday, Thor's day, pulling from the Druidic pantheon. So it's the origin of the word. Part of how you connect with Pisces could be engaging and connecting with Jupiter or doing Jupiterian activities on Thursdays. Jupiter as an archetype, not unlike Neptune, is also tied with the sage, but more from the perspective of being the teacher and the philosopher, where in its Neptunian manifestation, it really is that divine being incarnate. That bodhisattva-like energy is more of the Neptunian sage teacher versus more intellectual, which is what we see more with Jupiter. Jupiter's the nomad and the shaman. Jupiter is associated, as I've talked about in earlier episodes, with Sagittarius. So it's that traveling energy, that wandering energy, seeking things, which Neptune and Pisces have. With the Piscean manifestation of it, it's that seeking higher purpose, higher meaning to life, which is part of why Jupiter sometimes is associated with the priest or priestess, but again, as the form of the teacher more than the spiritual master. So if we combine all of this, right, so we're looking at the malleability, the water, Jupiter, Neptune, merging all of these understandings together, we get a deeper understanding of Pisces. And so Pisces' key phrase, key words, its phrase is, I believe. That this trust in the greater picture, that you believe there to be a point to all of this. And so within Pisces, we have this adaptability energy that is part of that mutability energy. Pisces is compassionate, holding space and compassion for everyone who's suffering. It's the dreamer. As I mentioned a little bit before, it can be vulnerable, like with Neptune, of addictive-like behavior. So drugs and alcohol or other forms of escapism can be a vulnerability for Pisces. But it's deeply emotional. And so sometimes trying to navigate that sensitivity in the world results in a desire to numb because it can be too much. Pisces is deeply empathetic, deeply sensitive, and can then feel all the feels and be vulnerable to, it's really the psychic sponge of the zodiac. So feeling everybody else's emotions. And that can result in escapist behavior. That's why we sometimes associate it with drugs and alcohol or addictive behavior. Pisces can be related to fantasy, which can have, on one hand, beautiful, that you're able to sort of be imaginative and dreamy and see things that are possibilities that other people, particularly that Virgo polarity that likes the logic, the flip to that is that fantasy and that imagination energy. The challenge is if that fantasy chips too far out of reality, is the lack of realism, the lack of being realistic, that Virgo polarity helps to right size if you are engaging with both archetypes. Pisces is partly about inspiration, that aha kind of inspiration, that eureka inspiration is very Piscean. Pisces can sometimes feel very isolated in the world because they are so sensitive. It's such a sensitive sign that it can feel too hard, too much to be in and of the world. And so there can be a desire to isolate or to self-isolate. Sometimes Pisces can be vulnerable to playing the martyr, the one who, because it feels everything and is willing unconsciously or consciously to take on the burdens of those around them, that it can tip out of balance into martyrdom, and both in terms of wanting others to recognize what they're doing, or also just an imbalanced relationship with supporting others. Pisces is also about merging, right? That malleability energy, it dissolves boundaries. And so that can create a merging experience where there is no self and other. And At a spiritual level, sometimes that can be really powerful. Walking in the world, it can be a loss of individual identity. Pisces is also associated with music and poetry. It's that dreamy place where things just can come through or just channeled. The musicians that talk about songs that are written in hours because it just comes through them. That's very much this Piscean archetype. As I've spoken a little bit before, Pisces also, so it being so sensitive, is very psychic, very intuitive. That also is part of that vulnerability of feeling all the feels and feeling other people's things, picking up on what's going on for other people, even if you're not wanting to. Pisces can be very reflective, right? It's water, so it's the reflection of the water. But is that always accurate? Because water can distort what it's reflecting. So it can be really reflective, but it may not necessarily be clear. Pisces can be very self-effacing and shrinking themselves or diminishing their capabilities out of a sensitivity of not wanting to put themselves on any kind of pedestal or have people believe that that's what they're doing. Pisces tends to be sentimental as well, reflecting on the past, emotionally connected to things that have happened in other times. There's a tenderness to Pisces. And in a lot of ways, because it's a sign that's associated with spirituality, in its highest expression, Pisces can be unconditional love and compassion. It can be the Buddha, the Quan Yen, the Jesus archetype. Pisces can struggle with being vague because they don't like to, or the sign, it struggles to be concrete about ideas or perspectives or decisions because they're aware that things are always in flux. So the vagueness comes more from sort of not knowing how to choose a single path or task or direction because everything is always in flux. So how do you isolate something? Again, we see that in contrast to the polarity of Virgo that's very direct, very good at compartmentalizing, very opposite to Pisces in that way. Similarly, Pisces really struggles to have healthy boundaries because it dissolves things, because it doesn't really understand boundaries to some extent. It doesn't really see a difference between you and I. We are all from the same source, so there's no separation. And so having healthy boundaries can be a challenge. Physiologically, Pisces governs the feet. So that can mean that those who have a significant amount of Pisces or prominently placed things in Pisces may have chronic issues with their feet. Part of how you can understand that in relation to this watery sign is almost, if you think about it, like that's the evolution of creatures from fish, from aquatic to land, is having feet. So there's this vulnerability to Pisces with feet because that is that differentiation between aquatic and land animals. So switching gears a little bit and looking at Pisces from a psychosocial development perspective. So throughout these episodes, we've been looking at maturation and how human development parallels the signs. And we're now getting towards the end of human lifespan time at the end of the zodiac. So at this point, we find ourselves sort of mid-70s onward. We don't really circle back around after the mid-70s and find ourselves back in Aries that we see during infancy. This is really sort of end of life, 70s and onward. And so this can be a time when latent spirituality or religion returns or comes back into somebody's life in a new way. Maybe somebody was religious as a child and various circumstances had them give it up, or they lost faith at some point in their life due to life circumstances. And often during this period, people come back around to a spiritual teaching, or just not even a return to an existing one, but the broader concept of spirituality re-enters their life, or enters their life maybe for the first time. It's often a time of reflection, of looking back on the whole of one's life and what is left to do with the time they have left. How do they want to spend it? What do they want to dream into being? And what has been the purpose of their life thus far? And is there something that feels incomplete, so that when they transition, they feel that it has been a life well led? So this is often a time of reflection in that way. As it's the last phase of life, we also see things dissolve and come to an end. This can manifest in terms of long-term relationships transforming, friends and partners that transition. So there is a transformation of how one walks in the world and where they see their space and their relationship to the world that is going on around them. So loss of partners, siblings, longtime friends is often a part of this period. More broadly, there's a dissolving of your prior identity, right? As one moves into their mid-70s, there's a deeper development of who they are outside of perhaps who's been their public-facing self, their professional self, because they're moving deeper and deeper into retirement. So if you aren't what you do, that isn't your identity. Your career self is no longer part of your identity. Who are you? And who do you want to be outside of your career? Who do you want to be in the time you have left? What is that identity if it is not work-related? And as we move to the latter part of this phase, elders tend to sleep more. They're spending more time in the dream time, more time in this Piscean, Neptunian world of non-form. And so quite literally, the physical time that they're spending in the world begins to wane, and they spend more and more time in that altered state of consciousness of the dream world. So as I've done in previous episodes, I thought we would shift gears now, and I'll tell you a little story, a myth. And one of the challenges of discussing myths, particularly I find this true with Pisces, is that the stories are either relatively short or very long. So for this episode, I chose just a brief tale of a Buddhist figure, Quan Yen, the Bodhisattva of compassion. And there are a number of stories about this Bodhisattva of compassion throughout Asia. One of the stories is linked to her earthly life and her transformation into the Bodhisattva that we know today. And I think that transition, that transformation in itself speaks to some of this Piscean theme. Like the Buddha, she began her human life in royalty, where she was known as Myo Shan. Unlike the Buddha, who until he ventured outside of his family home, despite the luxury in which she was surrounded, she always found it disgraceful, and her heart was filled with compassion for all beings. When her father demanded that she marry, she refused. She wished to pursue a spiritual life free from materialism and the wealth that surrounded her. Angry at his daughter's defiance, the king sent her to work at a dilapidated temple, hoping to crush her dreams of a different life. Yet even in the face of this adversity and challenge, the princess remained calm and kind. One day, her father's rule became even more oppressive, and many of the people around her at the temple began to suffer. But rather than fall into despair and suffer along with them, Myo Shan used her connection to the divine and her devotion to heal those around her, releasing much pain and suffering. Angered by his daughter's failure to submit, the king threatened to have her executed. But as the story goes, the moment before her death, she was transformed into the immortal Quan Yen, a being who expresses the highest form of mercy, devotion, and compassion. It is believed that upon her ascension to the level of Bodhisattva, she agreed to remain in the earthly realms until all sentient beings had also attained liberation from suffering. Devotees of Quan Yen look to her for guidance on balancing gentleness with strength. Some of the stories describe her as a shapeshifter, able to take whatever form is necessary for the human who is called upon her for support to recognize her as an ally. She hears the cries of all who suffer and offers them compassion and nurturing, a manifestation of the divine feminine. She is compassion manifest. So there's a couple of parallels with that myth to what we see with Pisces, right? The immense compassion, the devotion to spirit, to the divine, is very much in keeping with Pisces. Also, that shape-shifting quality to Pisces, that illusion, what is real or not real, is part of that Piscean archetype, and we even see that in the myths about Pisces in ancient Greece, that the image of the fish with the reed between their mouths swimming in opposite directions came about as a result of Aphrodite and her son Eros, or Cupid in the Roman myths, hiding from the Titans during the War of the Titans, where they dove into the water and transformed into fish with reeds tied between their ankles so they would not be separated. So that shape-shifting illusion, transformation energy that we see in Quan Yen is present in the myth of Pisces as well. And so we see with Quan Yen, though, the Buddha of compassion. That is the highest potential of Pisces, the highest elevation of Neptune as well. Neptune is sometimes described as the higher octave of Venus, universal love and compassion, which is what Quan Yen embodies. Okay, so now we're going to shift gears again, this time moving into the guided meditation. So you may want to pause the podcast for a moment so you can situate yourself, and please don't participate in the meditation if you are driving. So you'll want to find somewhere that's comfortable to sit for about 20 minutes, and it can be on a floor, on a pillow, in a chair. You may find it helpful to have back support if that's something you're going to need throughout the duration of the guided imagery. And finding somewhere quiet where you can be present in the experience. And when you're ready, you can close your eyes, and we're going to start with belly breaths. So you're going to want to begin by slowly inhaling through your nose for the count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And pause. And release completely. 1, 2, 3, 4. And pause. Inhale again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause. 1. Exhale through the mouth. 2, 3, 4. Inhale one last time. 2, 3, 4. Pause. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Still breathing, but at your own pace and rhythm. Now we're going to connect with the chakra system, the energy centers that run up the body. And so you're going to want to start by bringing your attention to base chakra, root chakra, the energy center at the base of the spine. This is the center that grounds you in your body, grounds you to the earth, keeps you present. And on your next inhale, bring your attention to sacral chakra, second chakra. About a hand's width below your belly button. And this is the center of identity, of your connection to the world, of sensuality, as it is located between the ovaries for women. How we receive and how we give, our receptive and directive nature resides in this center. Give and take. And on your next inhale, bring your attention to solar plexus chakra, above the belly button now, through just below the rib cage. And this is the center of personal power and strength, right? Sun center, solar. And how we shine. Our sense of purpose often resides here. It can be a center of a lot of emotion, and so it is often very linked with Pisces, as it is out of balance or in balance in emotional responses to the challenges of being in human form. And on your next inhale, bring your attention to heart chakra, right at the heart center. This is the center that allows us to give and receive compassion and love to ourselves, to others. Again, not unrelated to Pisces. Universal love and compassion also reside here in the heart chakra. Heartaches and heartbreaks also live here. And on your next inhale, bring your attention to throat chakra, our ability to speak and listen, to communicate, to give voice to our ideas, to our wants, our needs, our desires, our dreams. And on your next inhale, bring your attention to your third eye chakra, just above, in between the eyebrows, a little higher. Center of vision, clarity, true knowledge, not intellectual knowledge. And on your next inhale, bring your attention to crown chakra, just above the head, a location that's often represented in halos in Catholic Christian religious artwork. This is the chakra that connects you to the divine, God, Goddess, Universe, Spirit, whatever your language is for the divine, for Source, This is a chakra that is the tether to that source of oneness, of purity. And feeling that connection to the divine, to God, Goddess, Source, Spirit. I'm going to bring that scintillating white light back down through the chakra system as we prepare to go into the guided meditation and imagery. So feeling that light come down, wash over your third eye, clearing out any foggy parts, any shadows that maybe have obscured your clarity. And as you continue to inhale and exhale, bring that light down through throat chakra. Let it serve as a throat coat to salve healing wounds where maybe you were fearful of speaking up, fearful of giving voice to things, preoccupied and not listening to those around you. And on your next inhale, bring that scintillating light down and through, embracing your heart chakra, cradling it in universal love and compassion. Allow it to heal the heartaches and heartbreaks of the past. And continuing to bring that light down into your solar plexus. Feeling it swirl around, washing away any emotional imbalances that have impeded your ability to stand in your powerful, authentic self. And on your next inhale, bring that light down into your second chakra, sacral chakra, balancing any of the tendencies where you can be too directive, too receptive, so that you have a healthy relationship with give and take, for both are needed. And now bringing that light all the way down to base chakra, you're grounded, centered, feel that connection from the divine, keeping you present in this moment. And see yourself surrounded in a cocoon, scintillating white light as we move in to the guided meditation, guided imagery. So bringing your attention back up to your third eye, your mind's eye. See yourself walking along a moonlit beach. As you walk, waves come just to your feet. The rhythm of the waves crashing matches the pace of your stride as you walk along the damp sand. As you walk, you notice up ahead of you a bonfire where an old woman is tending the flames. She beckons you forward and silently gestures you to sit beside her in the sand. She embodies a tranquility and a gentleness that makes you instantly comforted and feel at peace. Sitting beside this old woman, facing the sea, the firelight casts dancing shadows on the sand that bring you into a state of focused calm. Immersed in this tranquility, you know she has met you here today to to help you connect with your own divinity. See how she recommends that you cultivate greater trust in yourself. What recommendations does she have? What suggestions does this old woman share with you? And what does she recommend you do or could do to connect with the divine when you go into overwhelm, when you encounter challenges, as we all do? What recommendations does she have for you to bring yourself back into the state of tranquility you now find yourself in? Is there something you could do that would help maintain a bigger picture, a bigger perspective? What might help you cultivate trust in the divine and your connection to it? What would help you to trust that you are not alone, but the universe, God, Goddess, Spirit, whatever word you'd like to use for the divine, has your back? What would help you trust that you are held in this way? If you've struggled with boundaries between yourself and others, with loved ones or friends, colleagues, what actions does she recommend would help you to have healthy boundaries while still remaining connected to the people in your life? Let other questions arise organically and ask for clarity whenever needed. If you have a regular spiritual practice, meditation practice, is there something she recommends that could help you deepen your experience with this existing ritual or practice in your life? And if you've struggled to be consistent in a practice, what does she recommend would help you to be consistent, to develop a regular practice? Perhaps there's a different spiritual practice she feels would suit you better at this time. Is there something you should explore? See what she recommends. Is there a teacher you should seek out? A teaching, an approach to spirituality that she thinks would resonate with you? See what she has to share. And as your conversation comes to its natural end, ask her how you can connect with her and the energy of deep compassion and calm that she emanates. How can you stay in touch if you feel the need in the future. And thanking her for her time. See if there's a way she would like to be honored for her insight and support today. Is there some form of reciprocity she would appreciate? And parting in whatever way feels appropriate. And stand up and start to walk back across the beach as the moon slowly begins to set and the light of the coming day begins to return. The sky is slowly growing lighter and lighter with every step. As you slowly make your way back into the room and back into your body. And when you're ready, you can start to move your fingers and toes, bringing yourself back into the present moment, opening your eyes whenever you're ready. And when you feel ready, take some time to journal about what came through. What did you learn from this lady, this old woman on the beach? Take some notes, journal. It can be a voice memo, but take some notes so you can recall it in the future. And thank you so much for joining me on this 12th show of Cosmic Costumes. Although this is the last episode in this series, I will be posting additional Mythic Sky Storytime shows in the future. It is my intention to start a new series called Cosmic Characters, where I will discuss the different celestial bodies, the planets, the sun, the moon, various asteroids, and their astrological meaning through myth, metaphor, meditation, and ritual. Please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. And to learn more about me and my work, please visit mythicsky.com.